All right, so here we are. We are excited to start our panel today. Big thanks to the Future City Summit crew for creating such an amazing event for us, despite all of the challenges in technology and also in social distancing. So we have 5 amazing panelists today joining us from Singapore and Hong Kong. And I believe that there's going to be a very dynamic and exciting conversation between us. Just so everyone on the chat knows, we are recording the session, so be mindful of that. If your video's on or other things like that, and then because there's 3 of us actually in person here, we'll alternate between having our mics on when we speak, so we try to minimize our echoes. So my name is Max Song. I'm the founder and CEO of Carbon Base, and also will be moderating the panel here today. I'm joined by Ryan, Colin, Gonzalo, Christie, and I will let each person share a little bit about themselves and take maybe 2 or 3 minutes to share about their history, and then we'll sort of dive into questions. I've asked each panelist to prepare 7 to 10 minute remarks about their particular vertical. Now here we're going to span a very diverse topic, all the way from electric vehicles to power generation to smart city design to the built environment, and hopefully we can cover a large amount of ground in the next hour and 30 minutes we have. So maybe we can start with Mr. Colin Tam.
Right, let me unmute myself first. Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to be here. Very quickly, I'm somebody local from Hong Kong originally, but then spent the next 20 somewhat years in the UK and US working and studying. When I'm back to the region in 1991, I start my first power generation company, end up selling it 14 years later with 10,000 megawatt install capacity in several Asia countries like Taiwan, Korea, Philippines, and mostly China. So when I sold the company, it was has an installed capacity of a little bit over 10,000 megawatt. And then I start my second company in natural gas pipeline distribution. In 5 years' time, I end up with a pipeline in 27 cities in China. Divested again the second time and retired. And those 2 companies are now listed in Hong Kong Stock Exchange, under their new owners. The power company now have a market value of over $1 billion US. So for the last 10 years, I am mostly acting through my own private company as a developer and advisory to startup company, primarily in the renewable technology and the new technologies for smart cities. Also get involved with the waste to X, and the X could be energy, could be a new, a source of a primary energy like hydrogens or other chemicals like jet fuels or biodiesels. So I'm looking forward to share the power industry history and also future trend with you later today. Give you back to Matt.
Thank you so much, Colin. And we're so honored to have you here today. You have really seen the evolution of not only China, but also Southeast Asia's power sector, and very looking forward to your remarks. Our next speaker, Gonzalo, is joining us from a very long career in real estate, and also will share a little bit about his background.
Thank you, Max. Well, hi to all my fellow panelists and audience. My name is Gonzalo Portellano. I am the head of portfolio design for Jones Lang LaSalle. Jones Lang LaSalle is one of the largest property consultants globally. My work in JLL dates back to my background as an architect, and I am in Hong Kong for the last 9 years, but my journey starts in Spain, where I'm originally from. I have been working throughout Europe, Spain, France, Middle East, and my focus has been, even before coming to Asia, but especially in Asia, the human-centric design, and especially in the context of workplace. It is no secret that in the last months we've seen a complete new ball game when it comes to how we work and how we interact with our workplaces. And I have to say that despite the obviously the difficulties for many in this very difficult year, in terms of the evolution of the workplace, we have seen a massive acceleration of years in just a few months. This is a very exciting topic and a very exciting moment to be in this particular discipline. I am here to basically amalgamate my journey of all those years and this evolution that only starts today, because we live in a constant changing environment, but I'll try to encapsulate that and provide a snapshot of what are the implications for all of us, starting by the fact that we are conducting a semi-virtual meeting with some people in person, some people around the region or around the globe, and that is I guess the main premise that triggers so many other considerations about how we work and even the work itself.
Thank you so much, Gonzalo, and it's really, again, a big pleasure to have you here. I know you're expecting a new member of your family very soon, so I'm really happy that the timing worked out and we're able to have you see it in person. I want to introduce our two other panelists in Singapore joining us remotely. Ryan, would you like to go first?
Hi, thank you, Max. Thank you, the organizer and the fellow panelists. So I'm Ryan. I'm currently leading the efforts in smart cities and future mobility at Ecolab, Center of Innovation for Energy at Nanyang Technological University, Singapore. So some of my past background, including leading sustainability and technology development activities, including the program management of Living Labs initiative at NTU, where we use the entire university campus as a test bed ground for technology and sustainable solutions. Some of the projects include mobility as a service test bed, sustainable estate and mobility projects such as autonomous vehicles, electric vehicles, and mobility sharing. So currently, I'm focusing on supporting Singapore-based startup and entrepreneur scientists and researchers to commercialize their work. So I'm also leading the Ecolab's Continental Urban Mobility Program, Urban Mobility Accelerator Program, where we support aspiring mobility startups to co-create and develop proof of concept project together with Continental Automotive. So it is a great pleasure for me to participate in this panel and interact with Max, Colin, Gonzalo, and Christie. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ryan, and looking forward to hear more of your research and your sort of large ecosystem view of how these smart cities are being developed. Last but not least, we have Mr. Christie Fernandez, who is joining us and will be able to share from his expertise a lot about the electric vehicle industry.
Yeah, thanks, Max. Thanks for having me on your panel. Happy to be joined with all the fellow panelists. I'm a serial entrepreneur. Started off my career in technology marketing, moved on to advertising, branding, and marketing technologies. For the last 4 years, Surya has been my new venture. I'm focused on electric vehicles on a very niche segment. I'm focused on the ride-sharing segment in the developing world. So the needs of the developing world are quite different from the needs of the developed world. So in the developed world, the focus is on speed, on fast charging, on range, whereas in the developing world, the focus is on affordability. The cost per kilometer per seat is a driving factor over here. It's been a challenge trying to get put together a vehicle that can actually deliver for this particular segment. It's a very competitive segment. At the same time, it has its own specific needs. The fleet segment, for example, can't afford downtime for charging, and electric vehicles are battling with this issue of charging downtime. But luckily, when I started, most of it was impossible, and today, after 4 years, it's become possible. The technology is now available. The battery technologies have improved tremendously, and we are kind of waiting to put together a prototype and take it to market. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christie. So in the interest of keeping it dynamic, I know that we have prepared you guys to give long remarks, but I'm going to ask you to maybe space it out, and we can have sort of a back and forth. I think the best panels are the ones that allow us to really take advantage of the diversity of opinions and perspectives here. And I just want to contextualize this panel, right? So this is a panel for sustainability at the Future City Summit. We are at a very important time in human history. We have finally recognized that we have, about 10 years or less than that left until we blow past our 1.5-degree carbon budget. And there's a tsunami of activity happening on the corporate side, on the government pledging side, and on the nonprofit and the civil sector side. Meanwhile, COVID has really challenged existing business models. It's forced us to reconsider how do we actually live, work, produce, and consume. And I think in this context, I can't think of a better gathering of people to sort of look at all of the different sectors of human civilization and how do we need to actually decarbonize and move to sustainable business models in each of these sections. So I just want to start with the energy side. It represents 55% of human emissions on the planet, and Mr. Colin has actually been part of the very early foundations of the East Asia energy development sector. He was the founder and chairman of the Independent Power Producer Forum, which he ran for a number of years. Colin, can you share with us, from your return back to Asia to, I guess, early 2000s, like how have you seen the power producing sector evolve? And where are we now in terms of needing to use new technologies to produce energy?
Well, actually, after spending more than 20 years in the U.S. Working in the utility and utility-related business, I returned to Asia to set up my first independent power generation company, as I mentioned early on. And at the same time, I also founded the IPPF. I can see that my Secretary General of IPPF, Mr. Lincoln, is also online here. The two of us, together with 3 other co-founders, have started up that organization to help all the international power companies that come to Asia with the ambitions to transform the power industry in Asia 20-somewhat years ago. To the extent of trying to change the structure of the power industry in Asia, we totally failed. Right? When we came here, the power companies are mostly state-owned and mostly policy-driven, rather than market competition, which we try to change it to, to introduce more dynamic in innovation. But unfortunately, after 20-somewhat years, most of the utility supplier in the region are still government-owned, and they're still policy-driven. And although individual country might have some success in transforming from the dirty fuel to a more cleaner fuel, right? China in particular have been leading the way, but it's still far too little, right, in my personal judgment. And I have to apologize that in my days of running power plant and building power plant, I'm a dirty guy. I build mostly coal-fired power plant. So for the last 10 years, after I sort of semi-retired, I now focus on the cleaner side of the energy sector, which is what I see is going in the future. Right? China now, for example, in Asia, become the largest wind and solar installed base. Right? I saw that the latest 5-year plan in China is heavily promoting hydrogen as a new energy source to replace fossil fuel. But given a 60% a coal-fired base, China have a long way to go. And then I saw the miserable performance of the last 4 years of my own country. Mr. Donald Trump have not really, not only not slowing down the coal fire or fossil fuel application, quite contrary, he have shut down the renewable industry in the U.S., which give me some worry that as a leadership for the world, where we are heading, right, in terms of changes in energy supply. But I see new hopes. So I'm going to, in hydrogen, in electrical vehicle, I'm going to pause here for people to show their, point of view. And Max?
Thank you so much, Colin. I just want to recognize one comment, which is that today in the renewable energy transition, coal has largely been characterized as the enemy. But if we take the long view of human history, having electricity to use has actually been a huge transformative aspect. It's really enabled, massive economies. And so I think that your, journey has actually brought a lot of power to a lot of people, literally, right? And now you're sort of pioneering the new sources of energy. And love to hear more of those from you as well. Looking at the consumption of that energy, one of the biggest consumers is actually the way that buildings are powered. And Gonzalo, I know you also mentioned a bit about your strong passion of design thinking. Can you share with us a bit about how you see JLL effectively managing the built environment, and also in the context of COVID, how do you see the way that we are working and using that space changing dramatically? Thank you.
Well, thanks, Max. This is indeed the million-dollar question. We, as a company and as a commitment to our clients, have taken very important steps towards having in our own portfolio, which is a portfolio covering over 100 countries in multiple cities around the world, to be zero net carbon footprint by 2030. So I think it's important that organizations, especially those who are in consultancy and sustainable consultancy, are also able to walk the talk, and that is exactly the approach that has been not only publicly shared but effectively implemented, and we are in the process in doing so. And that is the first key measure for us, not only to be able to prove that first of all it is possible to manage more efficiently buildings. Buildings are some of the greatest culprits of energy wastage in cities these days. And that goes beyond the certifications that we work with. It is an effective commitment to measure in the first place and be able to implement policies that effectively transform that landscape. This is a work in progress. I think it's important to put dates that are out there for everybody to make ourselves, but also themselves accountable. At the end of the day, we've seen so many, Colin was alluding to, presidencies that have withdrawn from very important treaties and agreements. So it's important that we move into a phase of rebuilding those bridges and really start sailing all in the right direction. Now, this is our commitment with ourselves. When it comes to ourselves managing our clients' properties, this is a very important investment that the organization is doing, is in building a much stronger energy and sustainability service organization, because at the end of the day, we see that beyond a business opportunity, this is first of all a commitment to the goals that basically we have, our commitment to make the world a better place. And that is something that we will be seeing over the next few months. So we're going from the traditional, you could say, well or LEED certifications in buildings, which are obviously important steps, but sometimes they're cosmetic steps to some degree, because we all know, and especially those in the field, that some of the credits that can be achieved to get those certifications are actually not truly green, and some of them come down to more of a being able to improve some things that are more cosmetic and less effective, sustainably speaking. So we're moving into certainly a more effective way of using the sustainable initiatives, irrespective of whether we try to achieve a certification. And secondly, and that connects with us as people working for organizations, the fact that half, if not more, of the workforce in many locations are still working from home, that is a direct impact in the carbon footprint, because by not going to your office, you're effectively, especially if you have a private car, you're effectively contributing to that net zero carbon footprint. So that is something that we need to look at from a sustainability standpoint. It's obviously more convenient for reconciling work-life balance, and that, I guess, ties with the human aspect of this panel as well, and how this all connects with the implications as an individual into the sustainability around us. So this is something that we're looking more carefully how to standardize, how to have policies around working from home in a way that also we are able to measure the benefits as in the individual carbon footprint. So it's work in progress. It's all been defined, and a year ago the conversation would have been completely different, but we are where we are, and we certainly need to take advantage of some of the positive externalities of this big crisis, which is life-changing for many.
Thank you, Gonzalo. And one question I'd love to come back to you later on is how do you think we will use office spaces in the future? I think COVID has really rewritten some of the rules of work life and how these two things are separated or combined. Before we go to Ryan, I actually want to have Christie be our next speaker. From a mobility perspective, that is a very large cross-section of where energy consumption and also carbon emissions come from. And something you touched on in your introduction, which I found fascinating, is actually the unique design challenges that come from designing mobility for emerging world context as opposed to a developed world. Can you expand a little bit about that, and also, your inspiration and motivation for starting your latest venture?
Yeah. I mean, the challenge with electric vehicles is the fact that most of the development comes from the Western world, and the needs of the Western world are quite different. But we all look up to the Western world. So speed, range, fast charging, that has been the focus of the Western world. And but those are the kind of vehicles that they drive in the Western world. Whereas in any developing country, if you go to any urban center, the average speed within an urban center, congested urban center, is about 30 kilometers per hour. Or less. So it doesn't make sense building a vehicle that can go 100+ kilometers per hour. So right sizing of a vehicle, I think, is very important, rather than trying to build a vehicle that can travel at high speed. Unlike Germany, which has an autobahn where you can travel at any speed you want, most of the countries in the developing world, have speed limits. And the maximum speed limit in most places are around 60 kilometers per hour. So manufacturing a vehicle that can travel at high speed means that you need to have a more powerful motor. And because you have a more powerful motor, you have a bigger battery pack. And then, you also then build for, because you have a bigger battery pack, then you need rapid charging, fast charging, and then, so it goes on and on. Whereas in the developing world, I think what we have seen is that most of the vehicles are small vehicles, whereas in America, most of the vehicles are pickup trucks. So the kind of vehicles that we use in the developing world is again quite different from the vehicles that we use in the developed world. Third is personal ownership of vehicles, of four-wheelers, is very low in the developing world. In India, for example, it's about 20 vehicles per 1,000 population, whereas in America, it's 980 vehicles per 1,000 population. So in the developing world, what the stats show is that most people use public transport. And when we say public transport, it can be a bus, it can be a train, but it can also be one of those vehicles that you see on the roads. If you go to Philippines, you find jeepneys. If you go to Cambodia, Vietnam, you have trikes. If you go to Thailand, you have a tuk-tuk. If you go to India, you have the rickshaws. So many people use such vehicles for last mile transport. So it's a bit haphazard, but the needs are quite different. And in India, for example, today there are about 1.5 million electric rickshaws that cater to last mile transport, which transport about 5 million, 6 million people every day at a fares of as low as 20 cents. So the needs of the market are quite different. And I think electric vehicles need to be right size for this market.
Thank you, Christie. I really resonate with that, and I think part of the theme of Future City Summit actually is to understand, the sort of design parameters of actually thinking about the cities of the future. So, what you've articulated is, I think, a very appropriate technology. It's not necessarily building the biggest and fastest thing we can just for the sake of it, but actually making it fit into the context in which it's used. Ryan, I know that you have a pretty holistic view about what a smart city could look like. Especially around mobility. Can you give us some of your insights there? And also, what are the most exciting technologies or paradigms you're seeing emerge in the design of new cities?
Right, thank you, Max. Actually, I think often people are looking at smart cities as a single track solutions or cluster of technology, but it's not so it isn't really such a simplistic view, because cities are complex, it's ever changing and it's evolving. So maybe let me start from a more fundamental view. So like a couple of months ago, Singapore actually topped the IMD Smart City Index for the second consecutive year. So for those who are not familiar, the index is based on citizen perception of the impact that technology has on their quality of life, and as well as the economical and technological data. So in this Smart City Index, it covers two key pillars, structures and technology. So structures refers to the existing infrastructure, and whereas technology in terms of the technological provisions and services available to the citizen. So in my opinion, both structures and technologies require continual renewal and effort to upkeep. So in that sense, smart city is not a destination per se. It's actually a process and journey for the city to progress. So therefore, it's also very important for cities to be evolving and also continuously keeping themselves relevant. So I would say that staying relevant and continuous renewing ourselves is really part of the Singapore DNA, because of the need to survive. So with this DNA, it enables us to move towards a smarter and more sustainable city. So coming back, so what exactly smart city means, and are there any commonality in smart cities? So maybe we can discuss this from a very simple smart city framework using Singapore as an example. In a typical sense, there will be different layers or stacks in a smart city framework. There will be the information stack, the platform and analytics stack, and also the application stack. So Singapore has put forward initiative and framework to enable future application in different domain area. So look at some of our Smart Nation initiative and digitalization effort in identifications, digital health records, and even the latest addition in banking and finance. Information are generated from various sources. So that being flow into the information stack together with other data. It could be transport, district management, even sewage management, and etc. Then putting them into the various platform steps for analysis and retrieval, where AI, big data analysis, API can be built upon. Then there'll be the individual application stack, where individual application can be plugged in or built upon for the different users' requirement. So for example, in healthcare, the medical records can be at different healthcare providers that form the information stack and consolidated through the platform stack, through our national electronics healthcare record systems. Then the tracking analysis from the healthcare status can happen at national level or even at the individual healthcare provider level, where they can pull data when you visit one doctor or one healthcare service provider from the other. So in the banking and finance arena, the recently launched Singapore Financial Data Exchange is also one of the world's first public digital infrastructure that uses our national digital identity and system to consolidate and enable individuals to access their financial information held across different government agencies and financial institutions. So all these different consolidated services provide more convenience to citizens and enable better clarity in managing the city. This is also the same for mobility, where all the different mobility services data could be centrally plugged in and pulled by the respective applications and mobility service providers. So what does smart cities really mean? The core of smart cities is really about solving cities' problem using technology. However, technology and infrastructure are just means to the end. The key point of a smart city is about creating a sustainable and livable city for the people in it. A city is multifaceted system where transport, urban planning, societal behavior, even the energy sources and demand influence one another. So the design of city, smart or not, should really be human-centric. So it's very important for people, solution providers, end users, the government to come together to co-create smart city solution collectively and iteratively to establish a common vision and deploy the relevant solution. So I just want to end this part of my conversations before taking too much time from the panel, is that there's a saying that Singapore is an experiment. We have a very short history. We are trying different things, very unique and different from what's happening within our region. So it really we really try and experiment different planning approaches, different systems, solutions, continuous, really to evolve ourselves and also to keep relevant. So in that aspect, we also create very strong support system, even in the innovations ecosystem. I'm very happy to discuss that in deeper detail later. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ryan. You're very eloquent and very structured view of thinking through what a smart city means. And I really like your definition at the beginning through the survey. Actually, a smart city survey was rated by the constituents who live inside it. So this is not an external measure. This is not someone else telling you whether or not your city is high tech. It's actually the experience of the participants inside. So here's going to be a blanket question across all of the different panelists in each vertical. What is the role of regulation in driving sustainability in your particular sector? And how do you see regulation affecting, the power sector, the built environment sector, the transportation sector, and also the city planning design in the next, let's say, 5 years? Colin?
I'm glad that Ryan mentioned and explained the concept of a smart city. In fact, in the energy sector, smart city concept from the energy perspective. I'm working in the several China United Nations Development Program, which are trying to convert, the traditional central supply of energy to a distributed model, and also converted the ownership control to consumers control usage of energy of the cleaner type. And I'm very bullish, on that environment. Now, capering with the 5G and the Internet of Things, we finally have all the technology required and the of electricity to allow a truly converted new way of city life from an energy perspective.
Thank you so much, Colin. Gonzalo?
So in the case of the buildings, we need to think of the, sorry, if you can mute that. Thank you so much. In the case of the buildings, we need to look at the developers as our great protagonists, as into what kind of regulation and what kind of measures are considered and implemented in their buildings. For me, there's a very easy way to look at this. Ultimately, the tenants and occupiers in office buildings or commercial buildings are having higher expectations about the facilities and the buildings and the amenities that developers offer, and that comes also down to the sustainability and the efficiency of those buildings, because they need to also comply with their own corporate social responsibility aspects. So that means that ultimately is the occupier who drives the level of you could say policy or regulation that ultimately developers have to implement. So it's very simple. If we're seeing a market where there's a little bit more vacancy at the moment, I mean, across multiple countries, and without going any specific on any particular city, with more offering in more stock, in more buildings, the developers and landlords have to increase the offering and increase the range of amenities, etc. And that ultimately comes down to serving the demand. And by serving the demand, I mean that you can't necessarily think of a well platinum certified building just as an afterthought. It is part of the value proposition of any developer these days, because ultimately that's what's going to drive your high quality tenants or multinational firms or reputed tenants into that building, in not a different building. Aspects such as the MEP and the air filtration systems have had like huge implications now in the perception of going back safely into the office. So then again, developers and landlords have an obligation to make sure that they have second to none systems precisely to bring that perception of safety and an actual safety to the occupier. So it is the demand side that is driving those higher standards, and that is obviously a good thing, because unfortunately within the building premises, and I'm thinking cities with probably lighter regulations, as in government regulations, they are ultimately the guardians of what standards do they have in terms of sustainability and occupability of those buildings. So in that sense, is good the trend that we are seeing. In that sense, we're seeing that the higher expectations is also making landlords and developers certainly more demanding with their own new stock of buildings in the coming months and in the coming years.
Christie?
Yeah, I think governments have a big role to play when it comes to environment, when it comes to pollution, when it comes to climate change. The automobile industry and the fossil fuel industry are very monopolistic in nature. And unless the government comes in and regulates pollution, I don't think they would like to make any changes. Government has banned people from smoking in public. So I don't understand why the government is not banning cars in our residential areas, in our urban spaces. I'm not saying ban tailpipe pollution everywhere. They can still continue in highways and no man's land. But I think in urban areas and residential areas, I think it's about time we banned polluting fossil fuel vehicles. Many governments are now beginning to ban vehicles in toto. I mean, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. So that I think is very important. lots of lives are being lost, lots of people's health issues are, are becoming more and more difficult day by day. And the virus has also shown that with higher pollution, the chances of contracting the virus is also very higher. Two, I think the government needs to reduce taxes on non-polluting vehicles, on electric vehicles, as well as on all the components that go into electric vehicles. And third, I think there needs to be higher taxes on fossil fuel vehicles and on fossil fuels, the petrol and diesel that we consume. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Ryan?
Right. So I think the Singapore government has been in a very awkward position because of the role a government, or rather any government, will be in a very awkward position to take on from a sustainability point of view. And on one hand, there will be the desire to do good, to move towards a more sustainable cities or country. On the other hand, the industry and sometimes the people, the citizens, may not be ready for the drastic changes. So let's take, for example, from a mobility perspective, the Singapore government has this year announced that by 2040, we will move towards a cleaner vehicle regime where the vehicle import will have to be clean vehicles. Let's imagine that these regulations was announced or implemented 10 years or 20 years ago. Is the industry ready to provide the options and the solutions to any city or not? The answer may be tricky. We may have some OEM providing cleaner vehicles, but that may not, the technology itself may not be ready to supply the entire nation. When we talk about city level deployment, we often also need to consider the what kind of factors are affecting the supporting cleaner energy vehicles. Let's say battery EV, for example. Can the national grid support the 100% deployment of electric vehicle to this to support this initiative? We may not be ready for that at that point in time. So the Singapore government approach has always been holistic and in partnership, really, to work with the industry, to work with the citizen in a way where the policy, when implemented, will not will follow through definitely, but it will not shock the country too much as well. So there will be a lot of consultations with the industry, with the people sectors, and of course with the academic sector to look into which area of technology development are required before we reach this goal. So I would say that the government role will be very complex and dedicated in the sense where, first, they are the regulator. Second, they are also the major buyer of technology and solutions. So coming from this perspective, it's really important for the entire ecosystem to work together to move towards a more sustainable city, for example. So coming back to your question, I think instead of looking from a government perspective, coming straightly from a carrot or stick, either regulations or incentive or grants perspective, it really come in from a more facilitated view of how can the government facilitate the cities to move towards a more sustainable cities, and at the same time providing the right regulation and the right incentive to achieve it.
Thank you. We're in the process of helping Colin reconnect using a different laptop, so I think it'll be okay. So with the regulation piece actually comes another big question, which is actually what is the sustainability aspect of doing sustainability? Many people here are entrepreneurs, are working in companies. How do you square the responsibility of the corporate actions with the ability to continue to keep your margins and continue delivering service. Many people have been concerned about sustainability as a cost center. I'm really curious how you see it as a revenue opportunity instead. And maybe just to start backwards, maybe we can have Christie go first, Ryan, and then Gonzalo and Colin.
Yeah. So for us, sustainability is very core to our business. We believe that sustainability is also a part to profitability. So the entire business model is designed such that our company would be a very sustainable company, and sustainability would lead to more profitability. Let me explain what I mean by that. One is we are designing the vehicle such that it is very modular. So modularity would also bring with it the advantage of easy assembly. So two, we are looking at all the processes that go into manufacturing a vehicle, and we're trying to see how we can reduce the number of processes that go into a vehicle manufacture. Third is there are some parts of vehicle manufacture which are harmful to the environment. So we, again, over there, we're trying to see how we could minimize the impact on the environment. The automobile industry has made a lot of money from service and spares, but with electric vehicles, the number of moving parts are less, number of components are less, and it can no longer become a business model or a profit center for automobile industry. So there again, we're looking at how we could reuse, repair, and reuse parts. One way in which we could actually become more sustainable is moving from sale of vehicles to sale of miles. When you want to sell a vehicle, then your objective is to make people buy a vehicle in a very short cycle time frame. But when you're selling miles, then you want to prolong the life of a vehicle. You want to keep maximize the life of a vehicle. So business models, I think, will have to change. We need to look at how we could make profit from sustainability instead of looking at sustainability as a cost center. Components that go into it, the materials that go into it, the right sizing of vehicles, I think would also go a long way into improving sustainability. Today, most electric vehicles have very large battery packs. That's because of range anxiety, which I think is something that is, not good for the environment at all. If the government plays a role, roads can, for example, be electrified, and then you don't need to have, your vehicle stopping for charging the vehicle. It can be charged on the go. So technological solutions can also help in improving sustainability. And I think we all have to work together as an ecosystem if we have to really drive sustainability forward. Thank you.
And you want to go next?
Sorry, am I next? Yes, sorry about it. So I think sustainability is actually very core to any city development. So if you look at it, if we look at sustainability, in the past we always have this perception that sustainability is a cost, but is it really a cost? I would say that sustainability is actually very integral to any corporates in their product development. Why do I say so? Because imagine I'm a manufacturing company. Looking at the energy efficiency, the material recovery rate, and cutting the wastage is actually a margin for me. It actually is very integral to my P&L. So sustainability would not be a cost factor. It's actually a very much a profit matters that corporate should look into. Of course, when we look at sustainability from a much broader sense, sustainability would be an important risk factor that any corporate should look into. Singapore, likewise, many other countries and cities has been making sustainability reporting a mandatory effort for listed companies. So companies will be subjected to public scrutiny on their sustainability efforts and measures, and that would influence the investments towards such company to let's say I'm a listed company, corporate, do I want to subject into a sustainability related major PR crisis? It will affect my stock price, it will affect the confidence and branding, and it will also affect the investment and business. So it will become a major risk for me, for any other companies. So from that point of view, sustainability is not just a cost, it's actually a very integral part of the livelihood of any corporates. So looking at that, I would say that corporates who are not looking at sustainability and not putting sustainability at the front, they are at major risk. I've also participated in many forum and discussion where the investors are saying that they are only going to invest in company with sustainability focus over the next decades. So that's something that is a food for thought. We also seen some discussion saying that sustainability investment are returning lower returns compared to the other sectors. I would say that at the start of it, it might be true because of the risk and options available, but we do see sustainability project having a very good long-term returns for some of the investors. So I guess that's something that we should look into from a longer-term perspective. And I echo with Christie that many of the companies with better sustainability performance and focuses are doing much better, especially during this COVID situation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Gonzalo?
We can look at how to make sustainability sustainable in my world in three different levels. So on one hand, if we look at the building, there are tangible and very specific actions to actually save money by having more efficient air conditioning systems, certainly improving the thermal isolations in new buildings, making sure that we are not as an architect, I'm speaking here, we're not just simply designing for a shape or for a specific iconic type of aim, but also really looking at systems in place to make sure that we don't have losses and we can really keep either the building hot or cold as needed, depending on the geographical location. That would be a very simple aspect, but still we're seeing so many new construction that is not driven by sustainability on top, as Ryan was mentioning. There's certainly a lot of benefits in having a more smart approach to lighting, especially inside in the workplace. LEED certifications and others give us a bit of a hint about what is an efficient way of light allocation within a premise. I think that is certainly the way to go. We are delivering millions in savings to our clients by simply looking at this aspect. At the end of the day, when an occupier has hundreds of thousands of square feet or square meters rented, that can be a very significant impact. So the electricity bill alone, it is one of those tangible aspects to already look at sustainability as a feasible business beyond the social responsibility that comes with having a sustainable approach. And then there's another level, which would be the occupier level, what corporates can do, what's in their hands to make sure that at an individual level, and that would be the third aspect, we contribute positively to a more sustainable environment. And for instance, what we're seeing in large cities with long commuting times is the beginning of a more decentralized type of workplace. We look at the headquarters, which we name as the clubs. This is still the center of gravity where people tend to go, but they don't necessarily have to go there 5 days a week. On the other hand, we have a new you could say, space of working, which are the hubs or the satellites. Those satellites are fully technology-enabled spaces that are more scattered around the city. And I'm thinking, for instance, Tokyo, those satellites would be around the Yamanote line, which is not necessarily in the center. It's basically quite separated from each other, but more convenient, very close to transportation hubs. That, by definition, is reducing the commuting time, which has an explicit benefit in everybody's life, less commuting, more time to do other things. But at the same time, the footprint is reduced because we don't need to really cover such a long distance to go to your headquarters. So if this is actually incentivized by corporates and they are implementing programs to make that a reality, so there isn't a perception in the employee that by not going to the headquarters, they're going to be seen by the boss, therefore they're going to be less productive or less visible. If we change that culture, we can certainly have an individual impact that contributes to the overall corporate impact, which ultimately are some of the biggest contributors to either we turn the needle to the positive side or the negative side. So those are the three aspects that we're seeing. There's other minor aspects but not irrelevant that we can certainly do at an individual level by companies cutting on the plastic consumption within the office, having more radical measures around reusing and recycling and upcycling. And that comes down to even the type of office furniture that you're using, that typically when you do a renovation, that office is just simply thrown away. And it is not even close to the end of the life cycle of that product. So if we look at all those aspects, this is also another element of sustainability, and it does have an impact as well if you multiply that by larger companies that have an impact on the lives of millions or hundreds of thousands of people.
And Colin, having built and created huge amounts of value in power plants, can you share a bit about how you think about creating good business models here?
Yeah, sorry about the technicality that I lost some of you for a moment because of my computers running out of juice. And so talking about sustainability, this is a good lesson. From the energy perspective, you got to talk about the supply side and the demand side. On the supply side, I think the answer is very simple, right? To have a sustainable supply of energy, we must go to renewable. And we must also go to a circular economy, which is take care of our waste and then using the waste to generate the energy we need. So those are what we need to do on the supply side. And then on the demand side, I think we need to look at the best energy source is actually a energy saving, right? Because a kilowatt hour saved is actually the cheapest and the better and the cleanest compared to any other kWh you can generate, even with renewable technology, right? So this is my definition and my view on what the future need to be on the sustainability side from an energy perspective.
So we have it's about 6 o'clock. We have about 15 minutes left. We'll last 15 minutes for Q&A. So in rather concise and compressed statements, we're going to sort of do a few rapid fire questions, right? And so first question is, what is what is going to happen sooner? Do you think that governments are going to force companies to become sustainable sooner? Or do you think that individuals or the general public actually going to demand change sooner? And which of these two driving forces is going to be the one that catalyzes us forward? In compressed 30-second bites, starting with Ryan, and Christie, Gonzalo, Colin.
All right, I think coming back to what I mentioned, I think the government will be the key facilitator to drive this collectively with the corporates, collectively with the people in the at least in Singapore. All right.
I see the pressure building from both sides. I think the government knows it has a role to play, and I think it's also the pressure from the public that we need to move towards a more sustainable, a more cleaner future.
I personally think it's a bottom-up approach. From the consumer goods world, there is clearly a demand in consumers for more sustainable products, and that is basically what is going to drive the change on the supplier side. That will happen in all aspects of life, and it's already started.
From my perspective, all we need now is changing the frame of thinking of the people, right? From the government side, on the policy side, from the consumer side, on the frame of mind. You know, instead of consuming more raw material, we talk about circulating what we have.
Second rapid fire question. Do you think that Asia has the opportunity to be a leader in sustainability compared to the Western world? And if so, why? If not, why not? Maybe Colin first.
I think Asia is in a golden opportunity to be the leader of the world because one, we still have a lot of new infrastructure that need to be built in order to better the life of the average person. And then secondly, we got the benefit of all the new technology being developed who are mature, but the West don't have a market for it. And the Asia market can take advantage of that. So I'm very bullish.
Absolutely agree with Colin. There is a lack of legacies from the past that Asia enjoys, and I think that's what's going to drive a double or triple jump onto the future. So a more technologically savvy population as well. That will certainly help. But ultimately, it comes down to also what you said before, Colin, about thinking of changing the consumption patterns, which is probably the biggest challenge for Asia at the moment, and be a less materialistic, or less depending on the goods society that it is today.
Yeah, I would agree with Colin and Gonzalo. I think Asia will lead the world when it comes to sustainable energy, clean energy. Asia is blessed with abundant solar, and solar, I think, is going to be powering a lot of vehicles, electric vehicles. And solar energy would replace fossil fuel energy, especially in transportation. So I think Asia would lead the way.
I totally agree with all the fellow panelists, but so to just speak of one risk factor is that the rising middle class in Asia, this segment, the mindset need to be changed. If not, we won't be indifferent from how the rest of the world is moving towards. But in spite of that, I believe that Asia is in a very good opportunity to become the leaders in designing, in moving towards a very sustainable and smart cities.
It's very inspiring to hear such great consensus from different perspectives here. I think something keeps coming up in this conversation is actually a mindset shift, right? There needs to be a mindset shift. So if you guys were to describe, right, in your view, what are the key principles that need to be embedded in the new cultural shift that we have? And some of it is actually happening grassroots already. The young people, for example, are desires to buy less things. They live less materialistically. They maybe want to value experiences, or they also want to purchase new green stuff. But if you had to decide what are the sort of 3 or 4 key principles you want to have, either in yourself, your children, right, in order for us to move to the mindset shift, what would that be? And we'll start backwards. Ryan first.
Right. Actually, I'd like to give an interesting technology answer. So think about car ownership. Do we really need to own vehicles in the future? With the technology of autonomous vehicle and integrated mobility solutions, for a city, we don't need to have privately owned vehicles. We could just have a pool of autonomous vehicles shared across the different citizens, and you can just use these vehicles as per like using Grab or Uber and so on, and it will just deliver you, as a person, as a goods to where you want. And at the same time, it will be so smart that it will also at the same time deliver goods to different locations. So this is really what I see for a future of mobility perspective, how to smarter cities would help to reduce the consumption, to reduce the ownership and make a shared economy work.
Thank you, Ryan. I'm laughing because Colin's second laptop is also run out of power, so he's coming in the third laptop. Christie.
Yeah, so I would say right sizing of vehicle, I think, is very critical. Today, when man started using transport, they started with a 1 horsepower, riding a horse. But now over time, we tend to ride a 1,000 horsepower vehicle, which is not sustainable by itself. So right sizing vehicles and shared mobility, I think that would lead to sustainability. Unfortunately, the automobile industry has, built vehicles that are very, broadly classified. Purpose-built vehicles, and looking at vehicles right from personal mobility devices, two-wheelers to three-wheelers to four-wheelers, and built for purpose, I think would solve a lot of sustainability issues for us. It doesn't make sense having a vehicle that can go 1,000 miles when every day you just travel about 40-50 miles per day. So using the right vehicle and having a choice of multiple vehicles, I think that is key to sustainability. Thank you.
I think ultimately it comes down to each individual's sense of purpose. We all tend to hide in our governments or leaders' responsibility in looking after the big aspects, but ultimately I think it's perhaps about having ownership that your individual actions matter. And yes, you don't have the reach or the ability to go beyond a certain point in your individual capabilities, but still, that's a lot that you can do, and that is something that requires that mind shift that we were just talking about. Ultimately, and I know that might sound a little bit more philosophical, but I think societies, and that applies to Asia and everywhere else, have to perhaps learn to live with less. That's a word that comes to mind. I mean, and I think I've seen it circulating in some of the comments, which is minimalistic. There's certainly a lot to learn from that, and I think it's also a matter of taking pride in being able to have a fulfillment life without necessarily all the materiality around us. I know that's a big challenge because basically the consumer society has been designed so that so everything is accessible. There's less friction between our desires and the goods itself that satisfy supposedly those desires. But I think if that is put as a reference and put as as an aspiration rather than a sacrifice, I think that's when we can have that mind shift as a society in general, starting again by each individual.
That's okay. Skip that. Skip.
Okay. So last question for everyone before we move to Q&A, and I see some amazing questions already. So please come and reference ask more questions in there. Future City Summit is really amazing in hosting a wide collection of diverse young people from across the region, people who aspire to become leaders in their fields and aspire them to take on positions of impact. So as a career professional, someone who's actually been very seasoned across this very diverse set of things, what advice would you give to a younger self if they wanted to make a big impact in sustainability today? Maybe Gonzalo, you can go first.
I'll probably go back to the same point. What is actionable from our side, and that comes down to perhaps having some degree of awareness. What are the actions that we conduct on a normal day? What's the implications from a sustainability standpoint, from an energy consumption standpoint? I agree with Colin that ultimately the best energy savings is the energy that you don't use. So can we be more efficient in our approach to reaching our goals on any normal day? is it? I mean, I could name many examples, but that come to mind. But perhaps rather than the individual examples, it's more about the practice of starting a new day and thinking ahead. What is your impact on that very day? What can you do on that particular day that is better and is contributing positively to a more sustainable world? That would be a start, and then make that times 7 billion, and we'll probably have a better world then. There you
go. I guess I would like to drop in a little bit here that I'm still a very strong believer in technology. And I think that technology is going to still solve a lot of our problem. I see a lot of promising emerging of all different technologies that are complementing each other. The biggest one is, for example, hydrogen. Right? It will provide the storage for the electricity. So together with the 5G and the IoT, I think that it will be equivalent to the next, industrial revolution, which were initially bought by steam and then bought by electricity use, and now is going to be bought by the storageable electricity and the communication between things.
Ryan and Christie?
Yeah. I think, evangelizing and building a community of like-minded people is very critical for being able to make an impact in today's society. There are too many large, lobbying groups that are already entrenched in society who wouldn't like to give up their monopolistic businesses which have been polluting the planet. More specifically the fossil fuel industry and automobile industry. So it's very important that like-minded people come together and come with solutions that can, lead to a better, cleaner transport and cleaner energy.
Right. I think for the younger generations, it's also important for them to acknowledge that you don't need to study sustainability to practice sustainability. So for an engineer, if you have the sustainability principle in you, no matter which area you go into automotive field, you go into industrial field, take that sustainability principle in you and push it in your organization, in the project that you are doing. So that's when the sustainability effort could be maximized. So for example, when we have people in the chemistry field, in the chemical fields, in the engineering field, business field, who are all aligned with the sustainability principle, I think that's where the world will change. Of course, not discounting whatever the rest of the panelists have said. The fact is that we don't need 7 billion people doing sustainability. We need 7 billion people doing sustainability in their respective field to change towards a more sustainable world. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we're going to just transition into Q&A right on the dot. I'm going to actually ask the people who want to ask questions to, ask it live. I think it's more exciting. And also, please, before you ask your question, say, your name, where you are right now, maybe one sentence on what you're working on, and then your question. So maybe Huni can go first.
Okay, hi, I'm Huni, but most people know me as Greenie Huni because I've been a green influencer for about 2.5 years. So basically what I have gathered is a pool of like real greenies who are, into the space of actually doing and walking the talk instead of just talking. There's too many people just talking about going green. So basically I'm gathering like-minded people. So in Singapore, I'm actually in Cambodia right now, but in Singapore, I do have my partners, doing the eco village close to Edwin State Road. Okay, so that's one project. I was supposed to go back in March because I have a eco village project that we want to start in March in Johor Bahru, but because of COVID, everything is put on hold. So here in Cambodia, basically, I'm just having fun, enjoying my life, getting to know the whole scene, and then we're going to start eco-villages very soon. Yeah. So basically what I would say is it just starts from you, right? Because everybody's waiting for someone else to do it, but why not you? So just do it. Okay, so another question. Okay, question will be how do you get people really involved in it? Because not many people really understand the word eco. It's all the greenwashing bullshit that's happening. So.
And we'll just have one person maybe respond, and then we can maximize the total amount of Q&A that happens. So does anyone want to respond to Huni and say, how do we actually avoid greenwashing and drive concrete action? Maybe Christie, I think you're smiling. Maybe we can do something.
Yeah. I think send them to India and let them play the role of a traffic policeman for 1 week, regulating traffic in the crowded, congested urban areas, and I think they'll come back where tuberculosis or whatever is the outcome of pollution. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question we have actually from where is this? From Hillary. Hillary, do you want to open your mic and say hi?
Hi everyone. I'm Hillary from Myanmar. I'm currently in Yangon right now. I'm a senior program officer with the Asia Foundation, and I'm working currently with a lot of CSOs here. I have worked with the government before as well in Myanmar, mostly with the public participation and inclusive urban planning. So I have like a bunch of questions actually, but I'll just start with one. Maybe the thing that I am most curious about is that there's a word called resilience. It has become very hot these days when we are talking about cities, and I just want to know you guys' opinion on the idea of it. Thank you.
So I want to answer Hillary's question about resilience and the role of resilience in city design. Maybe Ryan?
Right. I think the word resilience when used in city design are often or more commonly used to address in climate effect. So I think it's very important for urban planner, solution provider, designer to look at it from how do we design solutions that is robust enough to tackle the foreseeable climate changes effect. So for example, in Singapore, when we look at Singapore as island state, we are at an immediate risk of rising sea level. How might we design the building, design the country, cities itself that we can recover from the foreseeable effect of such things? How could we provide a solution, for example, mobility solutions that can be robust enough and reliable enough when there's a need of utilizing these assets for disaster relief? How might we, look into city design where solutions, the mobility asset that we have can be used to transform or rather to retrofit and to transport COVID patients, for example. So I would say that resilience would mean a lot of things, and really how flexible are our assets and our cities are towards externality factors.
Is Elmer here? Elmer, would you like to ask a question?
Yeah. Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Elmer from the Philippines. I work in the academy, and we are doing some projects to the countryside. And that one thing I have noticed is as what Mr. Ryan said, people resisting to change. And I'd like to point out that some people are used to the conventional way. For example, what I would like to ask Mr. Christie about electric bikes, and that if we introduce such technology to some people, they would prefer the other one. So what is your take about this? So how are you going to convince people to implement or to accept some changes? Sir Christie.
Yeah, so thanks, Elmer. I mean, Philippines is a beautiful country. I've been there a couple of times. So if you're talking about specific to Philippines, I would say that, we need to design vehicles that are affordable. If you're looking at a two-wheeler, you can't build a vehicle that is not affordable. Two, you need to make it easy for them to be able to charge the vehicle. Swappable batteries is an easy option to be able to, charge a vehicle and have no downtime for vehicle charging. There are solutions out there in the market, but unfortunately, many manufacturers are looking at the high end of a two-wheeler market. The prices are very high, and so they're not very competitive in the market. But I would say electric two-wheelers can be priced lower than your petrol two-wheelers that are out there in the market. Except that it has to be right size, it has to be, designed such that it can be made affordable and that there are no issues with using the vehicle from a charging downtime perspective. So it's just a matter of time before I think, a lot more such vehicles are available freely in the market. Leasing out vehicles, I think, might be a solution that will also take off. So people are not too worried about replacing a battery or things like that. So the total cost of ownership needs to come down, and then it has to be very user friendly. And with that, I think people would change, people would adopt. It's just a matter of
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
A question from Kant. Kant, would you like to ask a question? And I think Colin and also Gonzalo would be great to answer it.
Hello. Hi, so everyone. So I'm Khan. I'm one of the associates here in Future City Summit, and I'm also a freshman majoring in Smart City Management. So my question is that, especially like recent year, we have seen the emerging of sharing economy, like for example, ride sharing application or the deliveries application, especially in COVID-19 situation. So we have seen huge market potential of the sharing economy. But I would like to know if this increase or this emergence of sharing economy can challenge the urban politics, like how the government use the data on the urban space to make decision. Can these sharing economy can challenge the way of the government and regulating the urban so yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm happy to take this question, Ken. Thanks for it. It seems like the impulse of the shared economy is not easy to stop, and it's actually it comes with positive externalities and negative externalities. I think that the biggest loopholes for governments at the moment is precisely on the quality of the employment. We are seeing Uber drivers that are not Uber employees. We're seeing Uber drivers whose cars are also not Uber's assets. So it's a matter of liabilities and accountability as an employer that Uber is. That's alluding to one of the largest components of the shared economy. So I think certainly governments have to step in a way that is not disruptive. I think the model does work. It allows also for the opportunity for everybody to choose how and when to work, and I think this is very valuable. We are moving into a more asynchronous type of work, and if I choose to work from Monday to Thursday, and that is enough for me to pay the bills, to save some money, or to have my leisure time, then why not can I get that? And that's precisely what Uber and Deliveroo and many others are able to offer. So I think it's a blend between government regulation to guarantee certain basic minimums in terms of coverage, especially with health packages, but let's say more generally the health and safety of those employees, so that there's some minimum commitment to those, but at the same time not being disruptive, because I think that overall the positives are certainly larger than the negative aspects in the shared economy. Or that's at least how I see that.
Thank you. A few minutes left, so I saw a question from Steffi. Steffi, would you like to ask it?
I'm Steph. I'm actually 17 years old. I'm a high schooler from the Philippines, and I just wanted to ask if what are ways which youth, despite our age, can influence the environment and people around us towards sustainability? Because I find that as a youth, it's really hard to go beyond the simple little ways which we can contribute and actually see and reap what we sow and actually impact the world and go beyond our classrooms as a high schooler and really try our best at impacting. So I really want to know your suggestions on ways to do that. So yeah.
I think Colin, maybe you can.
I couldn't understand the question.
Oh, well, what are the ways that youth can actually really drive change, and how can youth, create big impact? How can young people get to make the same impact that you have done in your career?
Well, I mean, I obviously lived through a different generation, and when I was young, the conditions are totally different. But nowadays, actually, I think with the technology allow people to communicate, right? And make the technology more on a distributed level so that it can be shared with more people. The young people definitely, I think, actually have more opportunity than when I was young, once. And the government now, most of the government I see in Asia in particular, moving to put a lot of emphasis, in allowing younger people to have more choices. And I think it's also for the young people to try to grab them, right? I think opportunities is better than before.
Thank you.
I also just want to build on that. I think Greta has changed the conversation for the world, right? And she's, also in high school. She hasn't started college yet. And when I had a chance to meet some of her team actually at COP25, I realized that they were also 17, 18 years old. And just to echo what Colin said, I think the access that technology gives us allows us to, for example, reach across the entire world at zero cost to ourselves, except the internet bill, be able to communicate and organize with other people. So, Steffi, I think the fact that you're here already is a good sign that you're in the right crowd, and I think there's a lot of people here, including myself, would love to help find creative ways for you to be involved in some of the the reorganization necessary.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
So I saw last one from Vince. Maybe we can do this one really quick for Gonzalo.
Hi, I have a question for Mr. Gonzalo. In view of the current and future pandemics, what new building code requirements do you think should be institutionalized or implemented in cities?
Well, thanks for the question. It's a very good one, and if I can think from the top of my head, the biggest concern that we have learned over the last few months is to have proper air filtration systems, so that we could say we address two main things. On one hand, the short-term issue, which is like, are we in an indoor space, are we having the air quality as in free of potential viruses and bacteria? So that's one hand. I think that will be overcome as soon as we get over the pandemic, hopefully over 2021. But then there's another aspect, which is the shields that buildings are from the outside polluted environments. Particularly in China, it is an absolute must that the air filtration systems and that they provide a top-notch certainty that the air quality is excellent. People, to the extent that, and if there are people in the audience from China, they can probably verify that or validate that, they bring their own devices to measure what's the air quality in the office, because they actually make their employers accountable for not meeting certain standards. So that is basically the social conscience about the importance of that. So if there were one thing to apply to next buildings moving forward is ensuring that air quality that is excellent for all, and ultimately that has positive implications. If you have a clean environment, even from your productivity at work, from your perception and even appeal to go back to the office instead of staying at home, that there's so many benefits of that. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thanks.
So I think that concludes us for the panel. I just want to give each panelist a big round of applause for sharing. And thank you to FCS for hosting us today. I think the miracle of the internet is that we're able to make these connections across the oceans. And I think all the panelists would really welcome you guys to find them on LinkedIn and just stay in touch with them after. As Huni said very eloquently in the thing, being able to build networks is fundamental to actually our ability to drive change. So big thanks to FCS, big thanks to our panelists, and big thanks to you guys for your attention.